Welcome back to ECCMID Television. Our guest joining us now for a discussion about her area of speciality is probably the person who had the least distance to travel to come to ECCMID, and that's predominantly because she's from Copenhagen. So it's a real pleasure to welcome Maiken Cavling Arendrup, who is the head of the unit of Mycology, got to get this right, at the Statens Serum Institute here in Copenhagen. Your business card must be a ruler.
Well, you got it absolutely right.
Thank you so much. What's happening for you at Congress?
Well, I think it's lovely to go to the conference because you meet a lot of people that you work with, and particularly in my field, that is not a very big field, then you always have lots of international collaborators.
Yes.
And I mean, it's just essential that you meet from time to time and that you look into each other's faces when you discuss things. Then it's so much easier to collaborate also on a distance.
Especially when they come to your back garden as well.
Yeah,
that's kind of a nice place to be.
And that's lovely. And I apologise for the weather because it's been lovely for the past 2 weeks, and now it's grey and rainy. So I'm sorry.
But under our studio lights, it's always sunny in Copenhagen.
So we can look up and get a suntan here. Yeah.
Now, a world expert in fungal infections. How did that come about, first and foremost?
Well, that was an absolute coincidence. Originally, I did my PhD many years ago in the HIV field. And when you work with HIV, you need to grow that organism, that virus in laboratories, and that really takes, a biosafety lab for facility.
Yes.
So when you move on and you have your further postgraduate education, you can't just bring that research with you. So that was actually why I looked for something else, and then suddenly came these new chromogenic agar plates where the fungus, they're always beautiful, but they have very beautiful colours on this agar plate. So that fascinated me, and that actually, there were not many people looking at, working in this area at that time period. It's not more, 10 years ago or something. So that just caught my attention.
Blossomed from there, shall we say?
Yeah.
And that's interesting because you say there weren't many people working in the field at the time, but you've presented a paper today, a keynote here at the conference as well. You had standing room only, so there's obviously a lot of people interested in your particular area. What were you discussing and presenting today?
Well, today the topic that I was given was current trends in global epidemiology and resistance. And that is, of course, a very big topic to cover, and it really means that you have to take a helicopter perspective and see what are actually the main problems on our lovely planet with respect to fungal infections. And that is a very inhomogeneous field, you could say, because if you look at the high-income countries, then of course we do need better diagnostics. We know that probably around a quarter of our infections are not timely diagnosed, and that we see raising incidences of many of the invasive infections that have high mortalities. And particularly that we really see raising incidence of resistance. And we see that in Aspergillus fumigatus, where it's azole resistance, and that is not mainly due to the human use of azole medication, as most other resistance is, but it's due to the massive use of azole pesticides in agriculture and for material preservation.
Wow.
We've used azoles for agriculture, for the fungal plant pathogens for like 30 years, and constantly evolving the azoles that were used there. And so over the past 10 years or so, 15 years, these azoles have become more and more like the ones that are used in human medicine. So we've actually seen an increased burden of azole resistance in Aspergillus fumigatus since the turn of the millennium.
Wow. Is that one of the burning issues?
And that is definitely one of the burning issues, because this is an infection when it's in the invasive form that has a very high mortality by itself, but it almost goes to 100% when it's azole resistant. So, and that is spreading across Europe. We almost have it in all European countries. We have in Asia Pacific. We've seen it in Africa. And so far we haven't seen it in North America, and that's really opposite to the resistant issue in bacteria. Well, the Americans are always in front. They always have the highest resistant rates. But this is the absolutely opposite. And the reason is probably that we in Europe have to optimize our agricultural, the way we produce corn and everything, because we are a dense population area.
Yes.
So we don't have that many square meters for agriculture. So therefore it's important to optimize, and therefore we use a lot more pesticides than they use in America, where they have huge fields and could just, it doesn't really matter if the yield is high or not on every square meter. So in this perspective, we really take an unpleasant leading role in incidents, and because it's very difficult to change this use of azoles, because it's also important that we have healthy food and that there are no mycotoxins in it and so on. So it is quite a difficult thing to change. But the azoles are the first and most important treatment that we have for this disease, so it's really a challenge. And the other main challenge in the high-income countries is the emerging resistance against candins in Candida. And that is seen mainly in Glabrata, that is the second most common Candida species in the Northern Hemisphere. And it's seen in all countries that have, sequential detection of these isolates. So if they have population-based studies, they all report an increasing resistance, and particularly in Candida glabrata, which is also not fully susceptible to the azoles. So I think this and better diagnostics are really the main issues in the developing world, in the developed world, in the high-income countries. But that is in sharp contrast to
the developing world itself.
Exactly.
What are the major issues there, or what needs do you see in that respect?
Well, if you look at Africa, for instance, then we probably have around 500,000 deaths every year due to cryptococcal infection, and that is secondary often to HIV, but it is an infection that you can treat. You even have almost a test that is very easy, a bedside test, just like a pregnancy test. So that is developed. And if it was made available, if the drug was made available, you could have a mortality rate that could be cut from like 50, 60 to 10 to 20%.
How do governments in the developing world understand the nature of that problem? You say secondarily only to the HIV situation, and yet HIV gets all the media and the headlines. Cryptococcal fungal infections don't necessarily make news.
Exactly, and also all the attention has been to get the heart treatment for HIV itself available in Africa, but there is a huge need to make the compounds for this infection available as well.
Are governments in emerging countries receptive?
I think they more or less are, but it's also a problem of money and making the drugs available there. Yeah.
As it always is.
As it always is.
Now, you say you work in a relatively small but specialised field. All of the colleagues that you have from around the world, I guess, are here at ECCMID now this year.
Yeah, definitely. Most of them are. And from a point of view for your own time at Congress, and we know that you've given of your own time, but when you're satisfying your own needs, thinking about what to go to, how to choose what to attend, how are you balancing it? I hear a story of networking is as important as content. How do you see that in your sense, Professor? I think that's definitely true. If not even networking, almost more important.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy also to go to the sessions, even though you could say, oh, you've been in this field for so long, you should be updated already. But there are always new angles. There are always papers that you haven't seen, because the number of publications that come out every month is just enormous. Yes. And you tend to focus on what is particularly important in your area and your field. So my field has mainly been epidemiology of candidemia and aspergillosis, because that's the most important diseases in our country, and susceptibility testing, also because I'm the chair of the UCAS steering committee, and making susceptibility testing available. We talk about resistance. It's just, if you go just 5 years back, nobody was actually really testing fungi for their susceptibility.
Absolutely.
Yes, and for aspergillus, still most people don't. And so, how would you realise if you're a very sick patient that had other underlying diseases, if you died from aspergillus, if you don't even do susceptibility?
If you're not doing this, absolutely.
And if there was a resistance issue. So I think there's a lot to do that in there, and so that's where I've focused. But there are lots of other things coming out, and Yeah, so it's really a good place also to be updated, I think.
As an expert hand at ECCMID congresses, what advice would you give a first-time delegate who was coming in? And I've seen a few of them wandering around looking bewildered.
Yeah.
Can't find Hall J, don't know where Hall D is.
Yeah.
Where are the E-posters? What advice would you give a first-timer right now?
Well, that's right. I think ECCMID has now offers the opportunity that you can actually go in and have a look at the program in an electronic way, even before you come.
Of course.
And that is, I mean, this conference is huge. You have a high number of parallel sessions.
Yes.
So if you come unprepared, you're definitely not going to have 100% of what you could from it. So I think it's important to be prepared.
So get into the technology.
Exactly. Get into the technology. Download the app. Look into the program on the website and try to decide which areas you want to see, because that is going to make it a lot more efficient. And the other thing is also, don't ever be shy. Go up after the presentations, because there's we are human beings, all of us, all the speakers, and actually your question is just as important as everybody else's.
Of course, and everybody does want to collaborate as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. Well, it's on your home turf. You must be incredibly proud. You're going to Istanbul next year?
I am, definitely.
Most certainly.
Definitely.
Brilliant. Well, we look forward to seeing you there as well.
Professor, thank you very much.
An absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for giving us your time.
My pleasure as well.
Enjoy.
Thank you.